Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today's April 30th. A lot is going on. I've tried to distill it here. The situation's also been complicated because I've received nearly 50 requests for our trust package this morning, which, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled and I'm happy to provide that information, but I'm going to have to kind of get off this call and respond to these individuals. So I'm going to try to bottom line everything today. By the way, I want to mention, for some reason, the computer puts people on hold and off hold. I don't know why it does that, but it's not me. It's something in the system, so I apologize for that. So let's go ahead and get into the call here. Before I do, I want to mention one other thing. I was contacted by a number of people that have been listening to someone, I don't know who. They were very upset. They said that the dinar would probably hit the Forex at about 76 cents, nowhere near the $3.22 that the dinar was on the Forex when it went into a program rate, and that the deletion of the zeros would substantially reduce the amount of currency we would actually be exchanging at the bank. So let me kind of respond to that call. I don't believe that the dinar will hit the Forex at 76 cents, but let's assume for the sake of discussion that it does. So what? It's not going to stay there. It's going to move straight up. It's going to come to a Basel IV compliant rate, which in my opinion has to be above $3.22. The other issue has to do with the deletion of zeros. If you're reading the articles coming out of Iraq and from other international organizations, they refer to the deletion of the zeros in country. And that's important, because there's a distinction between the deletion of the zeros in country for the Iraqi citizen and for international entities and individuals that have invested in the country through the purchase of this 3-0 provisional currency. So I find it hard, if not impossible, to believe that the deletion of the zeros would affect us, because it would also affect all of the global central banks that have invested in the provisional 3-0 dinar. It would affect all of the international hedge funds that have invested in the provisional 3-0 dinar. It would also basically negate all of the currency swaps that Iraq has done with other nations, and for their reserve currencies, and it would also, of course, affect the individual investor, such as ourselves. So the explanation for the deletion of the zeros globally is that it's going to create hyperinflation in Iraq. Well, there's not going to be hyperinflation in Iraq or anywhere else. There's not going to be hyperinflation in Iraq because the deletion of the zeros will take place in Iraq. There'll be a deletion of the 3 zeros for those that hold the paper provisional 3-0 currency, which they will then take to the bank and receive the new rate and the new currency. Now, for those of us that are international investors, and let's just talk about we as individuals, we will go to the bank to exchange our currency. We will exchange our 3-0 provisional dinar for the U.S. dollar. Now, to the extent that that might create hyperinflation, it's going to be nothing compared to what would happen in Iraq. If the 3-0 provisional currency was available in Iraq at the new rate, that would be hyperinflationary, because every citizen who operates now exclusively with the Iraqi dinar would have their 3-0 currency at the new rate. That's not what's going to happen in the United States. In the United States, a country of close to 360 million people, somewhere between 10 and 15 million will exchange the dinar, the provisional 30, and get U.S. dollars for that. So it could create some inflation in this country, but it would be virtually negligible compared to what would happen if that was the issue in Iraq. It will not be the issue in Iraq, but it will not affect us. If we have 1 million dinar, and I'm just using a conservative number, the 30 provisional notes, and we have $1 million, we will go to the bank, we will exchange it, hopefully for $3.22 or more. So we'll walk out of that bank with over $3 million, and so will the 10 to 15 million Americans that have currencies as well. And it certainly will not be deflationary, but given the number of individuals in the country that have currencies, it's going to be a negligible, if any, pickup in inflation in any event. So I got a lot of calls from people that were very upset about that. I don't think we have an issue at all. It's not a bad idea for people to bring things like this up rather than simply ignore them. But when they do come up, we have to deal with them and to discuss them. What I'd like to talk about is what's going on in Iraq today. What's been going in Iraq, frankly, for probably going on 10 years, which is the, unfortunately, very slow implementation, agonizingly slow implementation of Dr. Shabibi's monetary reform going back 15 years. And Iraq, through its international contracts that it's implemented for the rebuilding of its nation, is clearly operating with an undisclosed exchange rate. Article 12-2C of the Iraqi budget has an undisclosed rate, but there is no way that Iraq can be implementing and engaging in all these international contracts, currency swaps at 1310. It's not happening. In addition, the CBI, with its governor Al-Awlaq, has been meeting with the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, U.S. Treasury, and others. There's absolutely no reason for those meetings to take place at 1310. Therefore, they must be operating with as an yet undisclosed rate in order for them to be having discussions. There's nothing to discuss at 1310. There's a lot to discuss at 322 or higher. And so that's where we find ourselves. It's no more complicated than that. Also in Iraq, of course, we see the transition to digital currencies, to a digital currency, eliminating, of course, the use of paper currency, eliminating the need for people to hoard the currency, because if you're operating digitally, the paper currency has to be turned in. And, of course, if it's the 30, it's not an issue in Iraq. But what this does do is it eliminates fraud and pilfering from Iranian, pro-Iranian officials in Iraq and Iran itself. So that's important as well. Enter something I refer to as the Trump factor. Trump's a factor both internally in Iraq, externally in the Middle East, and internally in the United States. I've gotten into great detail about tariffs and why Donald Trump is employing tariffs, the history of tariffs. But basically put, what the tariffs do is it compels countries to operate fairly, not to try to take advantage of other nations through artificially devaluing its currency or creating large tariffs in order for goods from other countries to be sold on an equal par with domestic products in that given country. The United States, to use Trump's words, have literally been ripped off for half a century through the use of tariffs. Successions of presidents, both Republican, Democrat, liberal, and conservative, unfortunately have operated under the United States is the richest country and we can afford to take a little bit of a ding to help these other countries. Well, it's gotten to the point now where it's been disadvantageous for us, where manufacturers are leaving the country, and inflation is a little bit more difficult to deal with in this country. So he's pumped the brakes on that, and he's reversing all of that. But what's most important is how it's working in Iraq, because there are going to be tariffs in Iraq if they attempt to tariff us in any way. So what Trump is doing is he's working hand in hand with the Iraqi CBI in order to avoid the implementation of tariffs in that country. And the other thing Trump has done, and of course we heard on the news that he sent a rather long letter to the mullahs of Iran, and he basically put them on notice. Worst case scenario for Iran would be crippling economic sanctions. Worst case for Iran would be a full-scale invasion of the United States to accomplish a number of things. Number one, destroy their oil fields and their ability to produce oil, their single largest, if not single, source of revenue, and destroy their nuclear capability, and destroy their ability to consummate trade deals with other nations through sanctions. So Iran, I think, has finally gotten the message, and as part of that, they're going to stop with the interference in Iraq, which might be the last shoe that needed to drop in order for Iraq to be able to go ahead and put their currency on the Forex, reinstitute in country. So this is where we find ourselves now. I can't give you a date or a rate. I can't give you a time. I'm just saying things are speeding up. It's all moving in the right direction. I think we have the right players in place in Iraq. We definitely have the right players in place in the United States. And so this brings me to the last point I wanted to make. There's going to be four kinds of people in this country when the dinar hits the Forex. Because when the dinar hits the Forex, it can be argued that this will be the single largest windfall ever recorded. Now, why do I say that? Well, let's take just a brief history of what's happened. Going back to the regime of Saddam Hussein, he basically cratered his country in order to enrich himself and his cronies. He then invaded Kuwait to kind of recoup what he had lost. The United States, with a coalition of forces, expelled Iraq from Kuwait and placed their currency sanctioned the country and placed their currency in a program rate. Many individuals, knowing that Iraq per square mile is one of the richest countries, if not the richest country in the world, also realized that at some point the Iraqi dinar would come out of the program rate. So they invested into the Iraqi dinar. Now, and I'm part of this group, I expected what is about to occur to have happened years ago, but it didn't. But the fact of the matter is we purchased the Iraqi dinar in order to help the nation state of Iraq to recover, and we purchased the dinar next to nothing. When the dinar hits the Forex, and again, we're talking about arguably the richest country per square mile in the world, a Basel IV compliant rate would, in my view, conservatively put the dinar at about 322, the value of the currency when it went into a program rate, and a lot closer, in my humble opinion, to $5. So do the math. You purchased 1 million dinar for about $900, and you could exchange that for anywhere from $3.25 million to $5 million. Now, 10 years ago, people would have laughed at that prospect, but they're not laughing now. This is where we find ourselves. Now, if you're one of the 10 to 15 million people that purchase the dinar and some of the other currencies, the dong has got it looks like a very good prospect, certainly this year. You're in a good situation, but you do have a windfall. And statistically, 9 out of 10 windfalls are gone within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, fraud, and civil suits. And there's a way to avoid all of that. The first thing one would need to do would be to establish a trust to protect this wealth. Very simply, I'm just going to review with you the benefits you get by establishing a trust. You're going to preserve your privacy and your anonymity. No one will know the nature of your wealth or how wealthy you are. You're going to be able to avoid personal IRS scrutiny because the activities occur within the trust. You're also going to have certain tax benefits available to you through the trust that would not be available to you as an individual. You also are going to have the ability to not only gift currencies to family and friends pre-RV to avoid the gift tax, but through the trust itself, you'll actually be able to gift the currency to them, avoid the federal gift tax, and control the post-RV proceeds. Now, there are individuals that are perfectly happy to just gift currencies to individuals and let them fend for themselves, but there are situations where you really want to help someone, friend or family member, but you know for whatever reason they can't manage a large sum of money. This trust will allow you to make the gift and still control the post-RV proceeds. The trust will allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate, meaning your property would pass to your heirs in private, knowing no one would know what your estate comprised, who your heirs are, how much they each stand to inherit. And the trust will allow you to avoid the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 65% of the entire estate. Through this trust, 100 cents on a dollar will go immediately to your heirs in private. The trust will also allow you a certain asset protection benefits both pre and post-RV. Post-RV, you're going to avoid something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What this means is if you purchase 10 million dinar for $10,000, transfer the currencies to the trust, and let's say conservatively they revalued for $1, meaning you now have 10 million in trust. Could you be sued personally for 10 million? No, you could only be sued for 10,000 because that's all the currency was worth when you transferred it out of title to the trust. Post-RV, there's something referred to as limited liability protection. This is accomplished through something called segregation of assets, meaning that you purchase the currencies, you establish your trust, you assign the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $10 million. Now that you have $10 million in trust, you purchase items, homes, cars, boats, etc., but you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by the initial trust you established pre-RV. This limits litigation. So if you have litigation involving a rental property or litigation involving a car accident, it's only going to involve that one asset because the other assets are in separate sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities not involved in the litigation in question. So for those of us that have purchased currencies, whether we purchased them last year or a decade ago, I think our long wait's just about over. So the next point of order is to ensure that you protect that wealth for yourself and for your children. And the only way that can be done is through the establishment of a trust package such as this. A sub-S corporation won't do it. An LLC won't do it. Family limited partnerships won't do it. Revocable trusts won't do it. Individual irrevocable trusts won't do it. The only thing that will do it is a package of irrevocable trusts. Now, if you're interested in getting our initial package, it does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. It would behoove everyone to read this information for the information alone. But having read all of this information, you're probably going to go ahead and establish a trust. You can contact us by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC @gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited LLC @gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. 4122. Contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to get our package out to you. Call us if you have any questions. If you decide to proceed, everything you need is included in the package. One other thing I do want to mention. Once the dinar hits the Forex, it's going to be a new ball game. You will have lost the opportunity to establish a trust and protect that wealth and your existence of that wealth pre-RV. But whether you have a trust or not, there are things you can do post-RV. I'm just going to mention one of them today, just to give you a sort of an inkling of where we're going to go post-RV. But there's something called a charitable remainder trust. So let's say, hypothetically, whether you established, let's just say you went ahead and set up our pre-RV trust, and let's say you had 10 million dinar, you put them in trust, and let's say it came back at $3.22 when you exchanged it. So you're looking at roughly, $18 million. So now you have $18 million in trust. And you want to maximize the return, but you also want to do some philanthropic things. Well, one of the things you can do is set up something called a charitable remainder trust. So let's say, as I said, you've got your 10 million dinar, you placed it in our trust, you exchanged it at 322, you got 18 million in trust, so you call me up and you say, hey, Jim, I want to leave some money to the private school that I went to, that my children also went to, and I want to leave some money to our church. Our church is growing. They'd like to build a new sanctuary, and I've got $18 million. I'd like to leave, say, $3 million to my church and $2 million to my private school when I pass away. Okay. So we set up a charitable remainder trust, leaving $2 million to your school and $3 million to the church. This means that when you pass away, that $5 million will go to those entities, but it means something else. It also means that during your lifetime, all of the income generated by that $5 million is tax-free to you. So you've maximized your tax-free return, which means it reduces the risk you need to take to net that amount of money. You've left $13 million to your family directly and $5 million to desired charities. I just wanted to give you an example of the kinds of things you can do and the leverage you have post-RV, because God willing, those are the conversations we're going to be having in the very near future. So again, the things we've discussed here today are important to you or of interest to you. I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package, because it has a lot of this information and a lot more that you might find of interest. Everything's going to change when the dinar hits the Forex. We've wasted a lot of time working in our lives, 40, 50 hours a week. But once we have acquired this wealth, time is going to become our precious commodity. We're going to be able to spend it the way we want. And we should be doing good things with this money. So again, the things we've discussed are of importance to you. Please contact us by email or phone. Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC at gmail.com, or our phone service 307-274-4122. Our next call, of course, is next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, again, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week, and pay attention, because things are moving fast. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Recorded.